All right, Mike, before we get into the business, I'm going to start with you because so many people who are probably watching live or recorded are going through some sort of transition that says, oh, what is franchising? Maybe I should join it. So your backstory, how did you accidentally fall into franchising? What's your franchise backstory?
Yeah, I mean, Nick, first, thanks for having us and for having me. This is exciting. You know, I think we for those of us who have been in franchising, we all landed it through, a couple of different paths, but mine was absolutely not planned. I got into the wellness industry also out of a complete fluke. I thought I was going to be an investment banker and got the opportunity from the founder of 24 Hour Fitness to be able to run some of his locations. And, fast forward to a few years later, Orange Theory, a brand that a few of us have heard of, was scaling quickly and started its international expansion. And I got recruited by them to help lead and drive revenue for Canada. And what a ride that was. And what I would say is, of all the growth vehicles, franchising for me has become one that I've truly admired and have fallen in love with, because you get the ability to work with so many incredibly successful people and help people also become entrepreneurs and build their own businesses while still leveraging all the incredible things that you can do to build an awesome brand, right? So I feel like you get the best of both worlds. And something that I think, we like to move fast at SweatHouz, and franchising allows you to move fast as well.
I want to unpack a few things. So as a drive to becoming an investment banker or something in finance, did you understand the depth of what franchising was? And at what point did that aha moment happen where you're like, all right, that is really good business?
Yeah, no, I did not. And, when I think about the perfect recipe for franchising, I always think about great real estate, great systems, but incredibly engaged franchisees. And that last part is really important. And so you can have all the numbers that you want, but at the end of the day, your business partners, your franchisees, and their people have to be able to drive the mission. And really understanding that in my first year of franchising was important. And I'll give you a story. I'll never forget jumping on a first call with a franchisee, and they were going through some challenges, right? But their business was growing. And it occurred to me, it had nothing to do with them not understanding the business case for why they should invest more. It had everything to do with the relationship that they wanted to build with the head office, right? And that's one of the lessons that we've learned here at SweatHouz. I'm sure we'll talk about later. But the people aspect is so important. If you do that well, just like a company, you can go faster. What do they say? They say, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. I think that's very true in franchising.
I love that. I have a follow-up to that. But before I get to that follow-up, I want to jump over to the Orange Theory experience, because I think it gives you a unique lens as you now apply the lens to SweatHouz. Is you saw something that was on a rocket ship in a category that, like, there's not a ton of innovation in wellness or fitness. And here comes this rocket ship that was slightly different than what existed. Talk about what you saw there that impressed you, and then some of those aspects that have now carried over to SweatHouz.
Yeah. And I think a lot of us at Orange Theory experienced this. And, Jamie, the founder of SweatHouz as well, we were growing really quickly. We went from 15 to 120 units in Canada in less than 3 years, right? Jamie went through similar growth to 150 units. And there's a couple things that really stood out. I think being a science-backed business is really important. It's at the core of what we think at SweatHouz. But in terms of the growth of franchising as well, it becomes really hard to scale at the pace that you want and keep the ethos of the company when you have a lot of different franchise partners. And so that was a big item for us, even in Canada at 40, 50 units. And in the US, we were at 700, 800 franchisees. It's very challenging to be able to make pivots, right? Or bring changes and get everyone aligned. And so I've always been a firm believer in small teams that do mighty things. I think the world of technology has taught us that. And I also believe that that's very true in franchising. Few franchise partners that want to do great things. And if you need to pivot, you can do it together, but you can get phenomenal feedback and come to great decisions, as a smaller organization.
Something else you said in the last question that I want to go back to, because I'm curious how you've managed this. And I'll use personal experience. If I looked in the mirror and said, what am I awful at? Like, mathematically awful at hiring. My wife used to joke, I would come back from a client meeting and be like, oh my God, they're so awesome. They're great people. And then look under the belly like 6 months later. And she's like, now you're angry at them? I go, yeah, they're bad. They're bad people. And so I think about that as it relates back to franchising. Like when you're in the wine and dine stage, like obviously the franchise buyer is trying to impress you because they want to get onto this rocket ship. At the same time, you're trying to impress them to make sure that they're comfortable putting their capital into this business investment. As your life has continued on, your experiences continued on, how have you put a governor on who you say yes to, and how do you protect the culture?
That's a great question. If I think about the two different paths that we know most, the first one is lots of franchisees with fewer territories. And the other, which I would go ahead and argue that few franchisors have really bet the farm on few franchisees with large territories. It all comes down to what is your DNA? And what do I mean by that? When I think about an individual and the speed at which they either move quick or they don't, right? They either are willing to take risk on or they're not. And you can feel that through the process. And so I think that, look, we go through all the traditional processes that any franchisor will go through to vet an individual, from net worth, experience, right? All of that stuff. But it really comes down to, as we are sharing our vision, as we are talking about how we are iterating quick and moving quick and bringing changes, and as they're talking with our other franchisees, you always kind of know in your gut, right? Once you've wine and dined for 30 days, 60 days, are they going to be able to go through, and do I want to go to war with this individual? And if the answer is yes, then you go with it. And that gut has proven, to be the right path for us, at least to this day, and totally foresee it being in the future.
Yeah, so it's such a tricky thing. I was with a client last week. They were talking about a candidate that had about $500 million net worth, and they said no. They said they just don't see the hunger, or they're going to hit some sort of stall out moment where the franchisee doesn't want to grow anymore. And what are you going to do? They've already made so much money in their life. You're not going to convince them to replace it. So it's like you're looking for someone that still has hustle and grit, almost is playing, because they have to be financially strong. They're almost playing more of a game in business than they are like, I need this business. And so it's hard to find that, because if you and I were to look at the business model, take SweatHouz, take Orange Theory, it doesn't matter, and remove the name, remove the colors, and just look at a P&L and say, let's look at the math problem. You invest X, you get Y. You invest X, you get Y. Now, how do we continue to multiply that so that the Y is so much bigger than the X? It's a math equation. And so when you're doing that, though, with high net worth individuals, you're also trying to find that secret ingredient of, do they have the hustle, right?
Yeah, and I think there's this one-liner that's been going around a lot for the last year, which is from a Roosevelt quote, which is the man or the woman in the arena, being in there, doing things, building the business. And what I would say for us and for the people that we love to work with, when we're selecting a franchisee, we're not awarding a territory. We're making a bet on, we want to be in the arena with this individual. And so if they won't be in there building with us, right, then it's probably not going to be the right fit. And so to your point, Nick, like, I'll give an example. I'm on the phone every week with a huge chunk of our franchisees talking about the business. And that's important because one, we can't lose touch with what's happening on the ground. But number two, the entrepreneurs that we admire the most are the ones that are in the arena, the Elons of this world. Some of their tactics are incredible, but if you think about it, they're in the weeds and they understand the product from top to down. We want our franchisees to be the same, right? Understand your business from top to bottom and be in there, know how to sell a membership, all of those items. Yeah.
So it's a great philosophical statement, because in business, we're trained to get out of the weeds and to work on the business versus in it. But the opinion here, which if we go to the man in the arena, if you go to the Tom Brady story, it's not like he's sitting there saying, hey, go throw this pass to that guy over there and go hit it in crunch time. He's like, put me in the game. Let me go win this game. I'm going to be the artist of this outcome. And so it's interesting, because in franchising, it's almost like the multi-unit operator that says, I want passive income, is actually opposite of what most brands should be looking at, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, you hit the nail on the head, which is Tom's on the field throwing the pass, right? But he'll get the hands dirty. He's filming tape. He's aware of what's going on. And what we have experienced and what I have experienced, and I don't want to say this is true for everything, but as you get to different levels of scale, if you start to work with individuals that don't have their finger on the pulse of what's happening, you get a lot of friction, and you no longer get the same level of partnership as if you and I both know what's going on in and out, so we can make the right decision for the future of the business, right? And I think that that's very important, because albeit that we are HQ, our group that runs the entire Boston market, the Chicago market, they are the true masters of their part of the world. And we say this a lot in franchising, you own your market, right? But they can only really own their market if they're in their market doing the work. At least that's our experience, and that's what we prescribe to.
Every brand's going to have a bottom third franchisees. No matter what, mathematically, you have a bottom third.
Yep.
And maybe their personalities are still in the right place. Like, I might not be performing the way that I expected, but I'm willing to put in the effort to get here. So call that a great bottom third. But the ones where you've got on the phone with them, you're talking to them, and you need to now motivate them to say, let's go back to reset on why you got into this business in the first place. Remember, it's a math equation. We have to get you scaling in order for you to find the profitability. Everybody's in this for money. At the end of the day, we can talk about passion and everything else, but you got to make money on this. How do you approach those conversations to make sure that the bottom is more like the middle, like you have the top third and then the middle 66%?
Yeah. We use this term a lot, right? Like your red flag stores, and what are we going to do with those? Here's what I have learned over the last 10 years in the space of franchising, and we've successfully taken a lot of red flags across multiple brands and brought them into the top. It goes to that third part. They typically have pretty good real estate. They've got all the same systems, but they're not engaged, right? Or they're falling out of engagement. Because to your point, just like the numbers and the ROI is math, so is doing the right thing. And so we keep it very simple. For growth, there's a sales and marketing audit. There's anywhere from 50 to 70 best practices. We audit the ones that you are doing and the ones that you are not. And we put our best people on the best opportunity. I will jump on a call with that franchisee if necessary and work through with them. Because we've all heard of this. It's lonely at the top, right? Well, imagine if you're an entrepreneur, you've got 7 locations, you don't really have a CEO network to work with. Who's getting you out of your funk? That's where I think you have to be heavily focused on that third part, which is you got to be there to motivate and support the franchisee network. And sometimes all it takes is someone who says, I believe in you, let's go do it, and let's check in every couple of weeks, right? So that's a really important part, Nick, is just our ethos here at the brand. It really is about building this small team that's going to be able to do incredible things.
This might be oversimplifying it. Entrepreneurs are crazy in the head. So that's typically the founder. Franchisees are entrepreneurial. In my viewpoint, they're not as crazy. And so when you don't have that crazy piece, when there's a stormy day, you actually look up and say, it's raining. The founder looks up and says, that's not rain. That's an opportunity. I'm going to bust right through this. And I think that's what you're talking about. That's why no matter how much money you've made in your life, if it's lonely at the top, you still need that motivator. You need someone on your side, which, like, when we talk about franchise support, yeah, systems, processes, real estate, technology, all that stuff is good. But that's almost table stakes. It's the intangibles of the culture that picks you up when you need that boost to get to that next level, right?
Yeah, I completely agree. And I'll give you an analogy here, which is I was just listening to a podcast with Michael Dell, and he was mentioning that it takes a lot of crazy, but in every single crazy, there's a few ideas that actually work and do really well. And if you're not crazy, you won't get to those ideas. And I translate this to this, which is a founder's level of crazy, a professional CEO's level of crazy, a franchisee's level of crazy are different. But in that person's head, right, they're living it the way that they're living it. And so we also have to recognize and say, hey, this is really challenging for our franchisee right now, right? Because I think we hear a lot about this in franchising, which is, they're overreacting, right? They don't know. You're right, they don't know. And so we have to be there to support them like we said we would the day that we said join the network. That's really important.
Yeah. Well, and I think about a franchisee that joins, especially if they have previous franchise experience, they've had time to build up the experience. But take someone high net worth individual, has done success in the C-suite, has made a decision to jump into a new category. What's fascinating to that, they go on day one, and now it's like, you're an expert in HR, supply chain, customer relations, marketing, operations. And it's like, no, like everybody else has time to build this up. And I think that's where franchisors under index on how much support they actually need. Even if the ego says, I got this, it's still like, how do we put the structure in place? And I think that's what we're talking about. Like, get them man in the arena, woman in the arena, get them in that arena, give them the tools around, and then obviously I could talk a million things about the business opportunity. Give them a large territory so that they have room to scale, as long as they're hitting the scaling metrics at a pace that we need them to hit. Look at the math equation in a more of an investment banker type mindset than like a one-off franchisee. Like, you have these tools. So I could probably sell the business for you. But before I get into the business opportunity, I want to go down the science side, because I watched you in a room. You paused for a second. I asked you a question. So give me what's going on with the business. And you paused and said, all right. And then you went off, and I was like, I'm totally bought in. The reason I want you to talk about like the magic on the consumer side first is because the brand is phenomenal. Like, there's no doubt the branding is great. It feels like $1 million, but sometimes a story is still hidden under the underbelly. And so talk about the magic of why you see this as a rocket ship and why it's a rocket ship with customers too.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Nick. So here's what has happened in the wellness space and over a lot of different categories over the last couple of decades. A lot of innovation occurred. And at some point, the consumer with access to information became really smart. And they sometimes knew more about your business than you knew about it yourself. Why is that important? If you look at a lot of the research that's coming out, if you look about a lot of the brands that are succeeding, and if you look about a lot of the comments on whether it be Listen 360, Google reviews, social, what the consumer wants is they want a product that works. And I can't think of what is more important to justify that something works in wellness than the science and the data behind it, right? And so we talk about an emerging category like recovery. You know, when I first reconnected with Jamie, the founder, and we spoke about this opportunity in this total addressable market, the two things that came out was, how do we build a moat? And number two, how do we build a product that is science-backed, that we know will deliver the results that the consumer needs? Mercer says that 2/3 of people in the workforce are dealing with mental health issues. Okay, great. Let's go to the next step. 20% of North Americans have a fitness membership. 50% don't use it. Don't tell me that fitness is for everyone. And this is coming from the guy that used to say, everyone has time to train, right? They don't, or they don't want to. And so back to the science and why that is such a critical part for us. Our mission is simple. We want to expose and bring as many people under the tent with the powers of contrast therapy, right? It's science-backed, there's papers, it works, and it is very accessible to the everyday person. And if we can do that, and if we can commercialize it in a way that people say, I want to go do that, and I want to do it again, then we'll be one step closer to making this place and this world ultimately a healthier place. And that's really important to us. The mission is really crucial, and the science is important behind it too.
And I think the benefit outside of SweatHouz is that the narrative is warming up. I mean, you and I talked about, I was very fascinated by a study that was done by USC on reversing the effects of Alzheimer's through heating up the body. And I'm oversimplifying it, but insight was when you get a fever, it's because you're fighting off some sort of bacterial. You're sick, and your body heats up. And so if you heat it up when you don't have the fever, it's going to find areas of opportunity to beat up. If we think about inflammation as a topic, whether that's related to heart attacks or other things that happen in the body, the thing that helps inflammation is the cooling. And so what's interesting about the business model is it is more of the recovery aspect. And I'm gonna say this statement, not science-backed. Like, I think about, you hear the stories of people that live till 105 and they're like, they were smokers and drinkers. I bet you they were relaxed and they found a way to recover from work. That's probably why.
I love what you just said. And, we've had some good conversations as well, obviously, with, I want to give a shout out to Mike Arnold, our new CMO. One of the big items that we've always spoke about here, and this goes from day number one, when Jamie founded this and when he and I rethought the product, right, and the customer experience, it was, how do we communicate this properly? Because the TAM is so huge and it's different for everyone. When you see a SweatHouz location, that you look at the people who walk in, it's everyone, right? And look, our position's simple. Contrast therapy is the healthiest form of relaxation. You said it best, Nick, and that's really important. And so, the last thing that I would just say to that point is the science is important in terms of understanding how it happens. And I'll give like a 15-second PhD to everyone on how this stuff works. Essentially, when you deliberately expose yourself to hot and cold, your skin, your organs, and your blood send a message to your hypothalamus. And that's what tells it to say, oh my God, we need to do ABC. And that's when you get all of those incredible benefits, right? From relaxed muscles, reduced inflammation, detox, reduce launching endorphins to improve mood, all of these critical things. And so look, one thing that I loved at Orange Theory was the moment that you finished your workout, you could almost feel your metabolism speeding up and you saw your splat points. When you're done your SweatHouz workout and you get out of that suite, you emerge renewed, which is our marketing way of saying it. But more importantly, the first thing that we ask individuals is, how do you feel? I feel great. I feel like I have so much energy, right? And those are things that are really important to people. And so, look, we've got an important mission here. And again, it's science-backed, it works, but people can feel good now, which is so important.
Let's say one more thing on the customer side, because I can see that it happening in real time. The reality is you're still a very small business. And so it's going to be proximity to me, whether I would sign up as a member. It needs to fit into my life. And, there's plenty of other studies on like the 15-minute city, like we're getting closer and closer to home, that the only way I'm going to go to a SweatHouz is if it's in this within this 15-minute city that I live in. I think about like fitness, like at 50% not using their membership, what they sell is the idea that if you do fitness, you're going to be healthier. But the reality is, like, fitness brands probably want you to stay unhealthy, because that's probably why you don't cancel the membership. If I think about alcohol makes people feel better. And so they have this feeling of relaxation, whether it's good or bad for the body or not. There's this perception of feeling good. So then I go to a bar and I have more alcohol. And so like you look at these two things, and down the middle, well, the fact is obviously proven. It's been proven for years. It hasn't gone mainstream. It's a gap in the marketplace. And you've seen like either cold plunge or heat, like in separate, not together. And I want you to talk about the operational side, because I'm very impressed by the internal technology. But it's like we're so early on the customer, because there's plenty of customers who would love this, who can't get there because it's too far away for now. And when they try it, they're going to feel probably similar feelings to other things that make them feel good. And so they're going to have this reaction that now they're going to see the benefits of the body that is different than fitness, that is going to make this very, very sticky. And so it's not a race against time, because you're already having tremendous impact based on the climb on members, but it is a race against time on the business side, because these franchise buyers, if they don't act fast because of your first statement on the big territory, you're going to miss out on this opportunity to be connected to this. So I just said a whole bunch of words. Any comments on that?
Yeah, so two comments, one on the customer experience side and two on the franchising side. You and I were just talking before this, and I shared that we just got back from Europe, right? Took my family there. You know what I've never heard anyone say? I absolutely don't want a vacation, take time from it. I've never heard that, right? It's never happened. Something else I've never seen is a couple say, it's Friday night. What do we want to do to relax? Let's go do a HIIT workout. I've never heard that either. Again, this coming from the person who loves training and fitness, right? So no knock against fitness brands. On the consumer side, what's pretty evident, we know the mental health challenges, we know the chronic disease challenges, but we also know that people love to take time for themselves and feel better. Our job is to commercialize that and give it to them in as many places as we possibly can, where it's financially viable, in a way that allows them to be the best version of themselves, healthiest form of relaxation, right? That's important on the franchising side as well, because you are right. Our number one path is sell large territories, what we call a hub and spoke model, right? You take the hub, maybe you'll have a couple of spokes around you of smaller groups and markets that you may not necessarily want to build, because we know the importance of being local in franchising. That's also important. But at the end of the day, you are completely right. We are selling out fast, we are moving quick, but it's important for us to do it in a methodical way. And something that is really crucial, you don't see a studio in New York. We just opened up Los Angeles. Kudos again. We built a great team here, but it all started day one with a phenomenal founder too. We made these decisions because we knew how important it was to test out all markets, to make sure that the product could work in every single segment. We are about to enter the LA and the New York markets in strides and very quickly, which is going to give us even more exposure. But at the end of the day, the most important thing for us is enter a market, be successful, build the brand locally with one person. We don't want infighting. Business is hard enough. The last thing you want to do is fight with someone else that's pushing the same brand as you are.
I love that. I could go on a total other tangent. I just watched the John Candy documentary. And if you ever get a chance to watch it, Canadian,
I will.
You're gonna see, like, you can look back at what happened in the 80s and 90s of humans that didn't have this in place, because they start talking about mental health and stress and all the things that probably drove John Candy to pass away at a very young age. But it's fascinating to start looking backwards at the things that were missing maybe a generation ago that now are coming to play. Like what's going to happen to this next generation is going to be tremendous. I do want you, before we wrap up, I want you to talk about the technology and the business opportunity, because the line, and it's stuck with me since I heard it out of your mouth, it's your word. You said, build a moat around this brand. When you build a moat, that means entrepreneurs aren't going to get in easily because it's too difficult. And therefore, investing with you makes total sense. And so talk about the moat technology-wise and brand-wise, and then tell what the business opportunity is for anybody that's watching this.
Yeah, it's interesting when people always ask me the question, what competitors are you looking for? How do you deal with competitions? I don't think about them. And I'll give you the reason why. It took us 6 to 8 months to even figure out how to come close to building a contrast therapy suite in 75 square feet. It's hard, right? Imagine having a sauna at 170 degrees, a cold plunge running a motor. You get condensation, you get heat. The cold plunge has to be able to deal with the heat. The chillers break. I mean, it's a pain. And then you think about, okay, this is just in the short term. How do you get proactive in the long term to understand what the machinery is doing? There's a lot of systems that go behind this, right? We can monitor every single plunge across the entire network today. We understand the flow rate. We understand the temperature. We understand the water height. We will be able to know if Nick has his pinky toe in a cold plunge, right? And that's not in the so distant future, so that we can then improve the customer experience and give Nick rewards for doing the things that he's doing. Look, Will has not built an incredible company with Roop for no reason, right? He understands the data on the customer and he drives core customer value all the time. Our moat starts with the engineering. It then goes into the hardware, and then that will bleed into the actual customer experience. So we can acquire customers better. We can get them to this moment where they say, aha, this is the best thing ever. And 3, we can keep driving core customer value. That's how you get LTV that's out of this world, and ultimately that you can really drive your mission home. And so that's a really big part, and it's a place where that we're going to continue to invest heavily, because the best way to remain number one and the best way to be the top of your category is to constantly reinvent yourself and build these systems for scale and have the right people. And that's what we're ultimately focused on.
Close with this. There's a franchise buyer watching this. What do you want them to know about the business opportunity, and why they should move maybe a little bit faster on this than other things that you may have seen?
Yeah. I've never seen an individual say, I dominated a category because I was the last one in. There's always risk, but at the end of the day, when you join a team that's had success in the space, that understands the values and that's scaled at this speed, what you ultimately look at is you say, great, can this last for a long time? Nick, you said it best. We're building a moat. There's enduring value. And if you want to be a man or a woman in the arena and you care about wellness and you see the metrics, let's talk. And then let's see if this is the right fit.
Yeah, I think that's a great closing statement. I mean, I said this is early on, even though technology and science behind heat and cold has been around forever. What this is coming up in the way that community is talking about this, wellness is talking about this, and this isn't going to just be for like the super athletes. This is going to be for everyday humans. Like the closest that I could point towards is like when Massage Envy said we're going to build a massage brand where people come on a monthly basis in membership, in subscription because of how they feel. And here, like the science backing is so much stronger than the reactions or what the longevity from a massage is going to do. And so like if I'm comparing this to something, it's that. And then what Massage Envy didn't ever do is they never built a moat, which is why Hand and Stone came into play. And so because you're focused on that, I'm almost more impressed with the technology and the moat building than I am with the business side. And the business side is very impressive. And so I share that because when Mike, I heard you speak in a room and I was blown away by this. That's how a unicorn brand is created. But that last statement of be the last one in, you're going to have regrets because you're not going to be able to scale this the way that you would have if you were an early adopter. And kudos to all those who have joined the system already, because clearly you can see they want to be pioneers. They want to invest their life savings into this and they want to scale it. And the last thing I'll say is that tends to be because they bet on the jockey, not on the horse. And when you walk into your guys' culture, you can see an organization that champions around the franchisee, and that's only going to further build Moat. So, Mike, I'm grateful that you gave me some of your time today. For anybody that's watching, obviously you know how to reach out to SweatHouz if you're interested. But I'm grateful that you gave me some of your time. Time is a great commodity to give me, so thank you for doing that.
Thanks, Nick. And I also do want to say, thank you for today. And I want to thank all of our incredible franchise partners as well and the team over at HQ. We wouldn't be here without everyone. And upwards and onwards, as they say.
I love it. For Mike, I'm Nick. This is another Meet the Franchise.